Oh, feels so good that Jezebel fell out of her tower a couple months ago. I feel so good. It's like, feels like the world's healing, doesn't it? You see all these like national and international like headlines before the Orange Man even entered the White House. It's like all of his enemies are just becoming his footstool. He's not a savior, he's a tourniquet. He's not a savior, he's a tourniquet. We stopped the bleeding. God has shown us mercy. Amen? Amen. And now we have time to fight. We have time to mobilize. And that's why I'm here today, because I care about the next generation. But guess who else does? All the gay communists and transgender abortionists and the radical left. They understand that the battle for the future is always the battle for the minds of the next generation. I mean, this is about as self-evident to me now as the fact that there's a creator. Going all the way back through the centuries, the revolutionaries who wanted to tear down Christendom always made it a priority to indoctrinate children into their kooky, radical theories. You can go back to Diocletian, shortly after the ascension of Christ, and the apostles who would kidnap the children of Christians, raise them as his own, indoctrinate them, and then when they were teenagers, use them to murder their own Christian parents. We could talk about this for another hour if you'd like, but that's just one example of how old and ancient this strategy is. So it should come as no surprise to you, friends, that Planned Parenthood is not only the largest abortion provider in the world, they're also the largest provider of the pornographic, comprehensive sexuality education in America's public schools. So all the weird pornographic cartoons and drawings and the gender theory and is the gender bread and the transgender unicorn or all these weird things in comprehensive sex ed and tells minors how to get abortions without parental consent. There's stories from my home state of California where public school teachers have actually taken high school students to the local abortion clinic to kill their kid. And in California, if you're over 12, you can get an abortion without parental consent. And you can charge it to your parents' insurance plan. And the insurance company is legally blocked from notifying the parents that their own minor kid killed their kids on their grandkid on their insurance plan. It's like, okay, welcome to Gavin Newsom's California. But guess who's behind all of that radical education and curriculum? Planned Parenthood. Because they understand how important playing the long game is. You know who used to be really good at playing the long game? Christians. But at some point in the early 20th century, we decided that it was better to just preach a cute little gospel and not take that gospel to the ends of the earth, to the uttermost, to disciple the nations. So we kept our gospel in our cute little churches while the left discipled the next generation into radical sexual libertinism. That's the introduction of my talk. My name is Seth Gruber. I'm the CEO and founder of the White Rose Resistance. I made a movie recently. It's called The 1916 Project. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in just one second. Some of you might be too young to remember this because you might have been in high school or junior high. But at the end of 2019, this purple-haired communist Marxist named Nicole Hannah-Jones authored something called the 1619 Project. It's now a docuseries on Hulu. And it was a series of essays in a book, like a few months before the scamdemic. And it said that America is systemically racist. Root and branch, your country sucks. And they said that America's real birthday should not be 1776. It should be 1619, when the first black slaves came to American shores. That so represents our racist heritage that if you really think about it, 1619 should be America's birthday. Okay, anyway, Nicole Hannah-Jones was mentored by Angela Davis, who was like the first critical race theorist of the last few decades, just hates white people, you know what I mean? And Angela Davis was mentored by Herbert Marcuse, who was the father of the free love movement in California. Herbert Marcuse, who said the way back into the garden is to take another bite of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That's right, guess what? All of the culture war, it's all spiritual. Why should you believe me? Because the weirdo leftist pagans use biblical, theological language to try to make sense of their paganism. Oh, dang it, I'm giving another talk already. I'm getting on fun. So, that's the secular discipleship that leads to the woman Nicole Hannah-Jones, who publishes this very stupid thing called the 1619 Project. 9 months later, George Floyd. So what is every American liberal leftist in the media waiting to scream as the only explanation to that incident? Racism. And if you said that maybe there was something else to talk about there, that's proof that you're a racist. And so then we enter the mostly peaceful, somewhat fiery BLM arsonry riot summer of 2020. And as they're burning down every major Democrat-run city in the country, they came up with a name to describe that summer. Not the conservative side of the aisle, the liberal mainstream publications. Guess what they called that summer? The 1619 riots. So they're connecting it to the 1619, that everything's racist, and so you gotta burn it all down, because if something starts in racism, like if the roots and the trunk are racist, which is what they believe about our country, then you can't just you can't trim racist twigs and expect to save the tree. You gotta burn the whole thing to the ground and rebuild it from the ashes. Okay, now do Planned Parenthood. If the premise is that whatever is founded and based on overt racism and bigotry has to be burned to the ground, then why don't you apply that premise to the best funded 501c3 in human history, Planned Parenthood? Oh, wait, they don't do that. Have you ever heard the phrase, the revolution always eats its own? Maybe it's in my fallen flesh, but I get a huge kick out of when the revolution starts to eat its own. It's probably not very Christian to me, but like when they all start attacking each other, like the L's and the G's and the B's and the T's are just like whining and moaning and cursing at each other. I'm like, this is so funny. Like you should have listened to G.K. Chesterton and C.S. Lewis and Francis Schaeffer and Rush Limbaugh, you idiots, and this wouldn't have happened. Anyways, so that summer, as the disciples of BLM in 1619 are all attacking each other, right after we canceled Aunt Jemima racist pancake syrup, the next person they put in their crosshairs, not conservatives, the next person the left put in their crosshairs was Planned Parenthood. And the 1619 BLM people, they said, hey, Planned Parenthood, your founder was a racist. And I'm like, front row seats, extra large popcorn, lots of butter, extra large Dr. Pepper, and I'm like a homeschool weirdo kid. I'm like, let's go, this is so funny. Because I'm smart enough to understand why it's funny, just like you know what I'm saying? Unlike the rest of your college students at whatever college you go to who can't define what marriage is, a woman, or a baby is. By the way, which means the next thing they won't be able to define is a Christian, and then they'll put you in a re-education camp, AOC, Bernie Sanders, Gulag. But that's also a conversation for another time. I've done a lot of speaking this week, apologize. So then the director of Planned Parenthood of Greater New York comes out. Guess what her name was? Karen Seltzer. Can I just say, I think sometimes God lets people be named things that are really, like Karen? And seltzer, a light alcoholic drink? Like that. Anyway, okay. So, thank you. Some people think it's fun. So, she led the Planned Parenthood of Greater New York chapter, and that's who BLM 1619 racist was attacking. And she came out and she said, you're right. We're not going to make excuses for our founder anymore and the damage that she did to communities of color. Did you just admit that Margaret Sanger was a racist and a eugenicist? Yep. And then New York City took the Sanger Square sign down. Planned Parenthood renamed the building that was called the Sanger Center in Manhattan, New York, and they stopped giving out the Margaret Sanger Award. Remember, Hillary Clinton got it, Nancy Pelosi got it, and Kamala Harris was trying really hard to get the Margaret Sanger Award. But then they stopped giving it out, right before she definitely would. By the way, Kamala Harris was really the first Margaret Sanger, she too slept her way up the levers of political power. And so then they cancel Margaret Sanger, and I'm just like, this is so fun. So I guess it sort of raises this question, like, who the hell is this woman? H.G. Wells called her the founder of civilizations. They were having sex at the time, so I don't know if he was saying that to try to get her in bed again, or if H.G. Wells actually believed that. That's right, the author who wrote War of the Worlds. Everyone's like, did he just say that? I'm a Students for Life chapter leader, okay, when I was a young person. It's okay. And this woman is also the product of secular pagan discipleship, just like Nicole Hannah-Jones. Why do I tell you this? To remind you of the importance of planting good seeds to grow trees, the shade of which you might never sit under. A long obedience in the right direction to rebuild a culture of life whose final fruits might only be enjoyed by your grandchildren. But the labor is worth it. And the left has taken our strategy and they've used it better for wickedness than we have for righteousness. Just a couple vignettes as my time dwindles away. In the late 1700s, when America was about 20 years old, we saw the rise of the first Anthony Fauci, who was just trying to follow the science. And his name was Thomas Malthus. Have you ever heard of neo-Malthusianism? We got any based Catholics or Protestants who know who Thomas Malthus is? He was the first person to say, we have too many people on planet Earth. And if you don't follow my very clear policy solutions for how we're going to get rid of the population bomb, then in 40 or 50 years, we're going to have international population collapse and everyone's going to die. Okay. Well, he said that we have to put like a sterilizing agent in like people's water in poor neighborhoods. So we sterilize those moms so they can't have babies. Why? Because there's too many people on planet Earth. Well, guess who read Malthus and whose life was changed by reading Thomas Malthus? Charles Darwin, who continues those same ideas, of course, survival of the fittest, origin of species, the descent of man. Well, a guy is reading Darwin, and it's revolutionized by these continued ideas, and his name is Francis Galton, who coins a term, he invents a word, eugenics, and says that it was Darwin's writings that inspired him to become the modern father of the eugenics movement. If you're thinking of Pol Pot, Mussolini, Mao Zedong, and Adolf Hitler, good job. That's all eugenics. Some people are good, some people are bad, so the good people should have more kids, and the bad people should not be allowed to have kids, or they should be murdered. That's eugenics. Guess who Francis Galton was? Charles Darwin's half-cousin. Anyone concerned yet? Anyone seeing that ideas have consequences? So then another kooky weirdo, few decades later, is reading Francis Galton, and they become pen pals towards the end of Galton's life. Galton begins to disciple this person. His name is Havelock Ellis. He was the Alfred Kinsey of England. I have a minute and 20 seconds. I don't have time to get into Kinsey. If you don't know who Kinsey is, go pick up my book, The 1916 Project. Havelock Ellis was a sexual weirdo who hosted orgies in his home, forced his wife to watch him while he participated in these entanglements. And one day, under threat from being arrested by New York City authorities for breaking the obscenity laws at the time, a young woman ships her kids off to be raised by her socialist friends in the New York labor movement, has them forge her a passport, and she flees to England, where she meets the neo-Malthusians, and she meets a man named Havelock Ellis, and begins a raging affair with Havelock Ellis. That woman's name is Margaret Sanger. We went awfully quickly from the premise, there's too many people on planet Earth, to survival of the fittest, you come from a monkey, to obliterate the weak and the unfit, eugenics, to sexual chaos orgy hosting weirdos in the UK, to the patron saint of feminism and the founder of the best funded 501c3 in human history, the largest abortion provider in the world, the largest provider of the pornographic comprehensive sexuality education in America's public schools, and the second largest provider of puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones for America's gender-confused youth. Planned Parenthood. That is the seed, that is the origin of the organization that we are up against today. And under the first 2 years of the Trump administration, when we had all three branches of government, they did not defund Planned Parenthood. You need to demand that they are defunded. You need to pray that they are defunded. You need to raise your voice that they are defunded. And you need it to be a pain in the butt, a stick in the eye, and a fly in the ointment. You need to become the enemy of evil by being stalwart defenders of life and righteousness. If you don't get the right to life right, you won't get any other rights right? It's the foundation upon which all of our other rights are based. And liberty and the pursuit of happiness don't mean much. In fact, they mean nothing at all if you can be slaughtered in the name of radical feminism. I didn't even get into the KKK and Nazi stuff and singers like KKK Nazi friends. So bring me to speak at your campus, I don't know. The 1916project.com, the 1916project.com, the 1916project.com, you can host a screening at your university. That'll be fun. And invite them out, and maybe I'll come out or we'll send someone from my team. Hey, will you go out there and give them heaven?
That's hard to follow. Because now I have to tell you that I was inside Planned Parenthood for 17 years. But he was supposed to warm the room for me. My name is Mayra Rodriguez. A lot of you have heard my story, but a lot of you have not. How did I get here? First, I'm going to tell you where I am now. I live in rural Arizona. I have goats, I have pigs, I have chickens, I have birds, I have a husband. And I'm living the farm life dream, especially now when eggs are so expensive, right? Like, I get a kick every time I post something on Facebook about having 25 fresh eggs a day. So, but how did I get here? Well, like many people, I started on this movement of reproductive rights, wanted to help women. I grew up in Mexico City. My mother was a social worker. In Mexico City, one of the biggest hospitals in Mexico City, really close to the Basilica of Guadalupe, if any of you have ever been there. So I heard horrible stories about the suffering of women. When I came to this beautiful country by plane, just putting it out there, I know there's questions about it. By plane. When I got here, and I went to high school in Scottsdale, Arizona, a lot of friends here that know that area very well. Woo-hoo! And then I went to Scottsdale Community College, and then my friend worked for Planned Parenthood, and she said, hey, why don't you come work for them? They need people who speak Spanish. Because I am trilingual, English, Spanish, and Spanglish. So I said, yeah. And I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't ask much about them, and I didn't know much about them, but she said they help people, and they help women, and they need Spanish speakers to help my people, right? Who doesn't want to do that? And so I remember that when I first went over there, there was this lady on the sidewalk, and she says, don't go in there, and I just thought that was crazy, so I went in there. And when I asked, what is she doing there? She said, oh, she doesn't agree with some stuff we do. Don't mind her. And then quickly asked me, what do you think about abortion? I said, well, I wouldn't have one. But if someone else does, that's her body and that's her choice. A phrase I learned during my American history class while I was in Horizon High School, right? I didn't know that in Mexico. I was taught that here, right? So with that said, she said, you're hired. I was like, great. And I started working on the preventive side of Planned Parenthood. What I mean is that my clinics were birth control, STDs, well woman exams. I was sent to schools, to youth groups to talk to the kids about sex education and STDs and all that. What most people think is the good side of Planned Parenthood. Because believe it or not, even some conservatives say there's a good side to Planned Parenthood, right? And for many years, I told people I was in the good side of Planned Parenthood. I was trained to discourage women from continuing the pregnancy. And how was that? When they showed up for a pregnancy test, I quickly was trained to never say congratulations so I wouldn't harm her feelings. Because we don't know if she wants to be a mom. So always walk into the room with a worry face, because this is nothing positive for her, maybe. So quickly, what happens to that young woman who's already feeling lost? She sees me walking there, so your pregnancy test came back positive. Immediately sees my face and goes, oh, that's bad. I'm in trouble, right? And then quickly upsell abortion. But you know what? We can actually help you. You can actually have an abortion pill. It's just like having a period. You'll take a pill, and then tomorrow, you'll take another pill, and then in 3 days, you have some bleeding like a period, and you'll go back to normal. How about the surgical? That's a very quick procedure that we will do with a professional, very safe, right? Nothing happens to you. And even if she had questions of, well, I heard that this could happen. Well, you know, we have to tell you that could happen, but it rarely happens. Here, it has never happened, right? That's how I was trained to tell them. But could I die from it? No, no one has died from an abortion. Not here, right? Probably in those back alley places in Mexico or in another country. But here, no one has died from an abortion. And then tell them that all they had to do was go to the center, 15 minutes of quick aspiration, and you'll go back to normal the next day. And your problems will be solved, right? And for many years, I was so good at my job of selling abortions that I kept getting promoted, living the American dream, right? Because when you come from another country, and then you come to this country, and you're able to do what you want, which was me helping women, and work in the medical field, because that was my dream as a child, then it is the American dream. And helping my own people, yes. I was trained to go into the Latino communities, the Hispanic communities, and tell women, you know, God did not bring you into this world to just give birth to children. Your husband cannot pressure on that. You can hide birth control from your husband. You can come and have an abortion and hide it from your husband. I will help you to do that. If you don't have money, don't worry about it. We will find you the funding so you won't even have to ask him for money. Because we can do that for you, because we care no matter what, right? And with that in mind, I kept working for them, and I became the director of the first facility in North Phoenix, and then I became their training coordinator for the entire state. Now, this Mexican, by the way, I'm an American citizen now, huh? Yeah. I voted for the first time, guys. Can you all guess who I voted for? So, I'm promoting, I'm the training coordinator, I'm training other women, other staff members to do ultrasounds. Yeah, with no other medical training, but just a medical lab technician diploma from Mexico and some college credits from Arizona. I was training other women or other staff members on how to do ultrasounds. And then I became the director of the Flagstaff. Who has been to Flagstaff? Oh, wow, nice, lucky. It is the nice part of Arizona where no one complains about the heat. So I became the director of Flagstaff, Arizona, and North Phoenix, Arizona. Both sides, they're doing birth control, fully funded by the Title X. And I started calling some things out, like Flagstaff, Arizona was doing pills once a week, which is abortion pills. And I questioned, how do you separate Title X funding from abortion? if it's in the same building. It is impossible. But no one asks questions to Planned Parenthood. We just give them all this money. They get to do whatever they want and move on. And no one is giving us an explanation why our tax money is being used to provide abortions, right? So with that, obviously now I'm getting the Employee of the Year award. And I know you have heard that from my good friend Abby Johnson. We actually have a joke. We are assured they no longer give the Employee of the Year award. It has not worked out great for them. We both became for life. It must be something on that award, you know, like a blessing. Because when I got my Employee of the Year award, it came with a promotion. Myra, we need you to be the director of the biggest abortion facility in Arizona. And I'm going to tell you that moment I said, like, no, thank you. But not because I was being a good Catholic person or a good human being that didn't want to go into the fully killing babies. Mostly because I have heard horrible stories about those centers. I heard that the doctors were narcissists, that they thought they were God because they choose and pick who dies and leaves, that the staff never wants to work there. There's like zero retention of staff, that the women that come there, the patients, are hard to deal with. Well, of course, they don't want to be there, right? So I was like, no, thank you, I pass. And they were like, well, you know, Trump will defund us. We'll close down clinics. And I agree with my friend Seth. We need to fully defund them this time. It is not enough just to go half-seas or a quarter. We need to take away every single dollar away from Planned Parenthood or any affiliate globally. So I start directing the abortion facility, and I start calling out the deficiencies and the harm doing to women. And remember, I told you that for many years, when women came to my center, I offered them an abortion that was safe. You will be okay. It's really quick. You'll go home like nothing. The pill, just like a period. As a director, I had to take the phone calls overnight of the women calling the after-hours hotline. And I had to hear the excruciating pain of saying, I'm going to die tonight. I'm bleeding. And no one is here to help me. And I just can't bear the pain. I had to take the phone calls of, I think I had a baby because I can see it. I can see the hands and feet. What do I do with it? And I have to be the one to tell her, flush it down the toilet. Don't worry about it. And that's when you realize that the cartel was this low compared to what I was doing. I compare the cartel because I'm Mexican. Just goes along with that line. And it's like being bigger than the cartel. These innocent babies are being piled up and used. Women are getting hurt. I call out the deficiencies. I call out all the wrongdoings of the abortionists. They're breaking the rules and regulations. They're not charting the irregular things happening in the center. How women were getting hurt and they weren't even told they were getting hurt. Falsifying a patient charts. No reporting minors that were impregnated by adults. Statutory rape. And honestly, I thought that care no matter what meant something for them. And when Myra came out and said all those wrong things, I was going to get another Employee of the Year award. You will think that if someone cared, they will care that you bring out all those wrongdoings in your center. But they didn't. What happened next is that I was fired, right? And when I came out, not knowing what to do, I turned out to the pro-life movement in Arizona. My ladies right here. And with the help of them, I found my lawyer, and we started a wrongful termination lawsuit, being the only wrongful termination lawsuit against Planned Parenthood to make it to trial. And I did that because enough is enough. We need to go after them legally. We need to have every single case go after them in the courts because that's the only way we're going to shut down Planned Parenthood. There is a reason of why every legislation that passed in our home state, Arizona was one of them, protects the abortion industry more than it does the patient. It has never been about women. It has never been about healthcare. It is the most corrupted industry globally. Our money, it is not enough only to stop the Mexico or apply the Mexico City policy. We need to make sure that $0 go out internationally to provide to Planned Parenthood affiliates to kill babies. We need to go after them on every single case and make sure that women have a voice when they get harmed by abortions. Make sure that every employee that walks out of there is able to put a complaint against their former employer, which is Planned Parenthood. The only way we will defeat Planned Parenthood, it is through the legal channels and hurting them financially as much as we can to take away every single dollar, but especially defunding them. We must take away every dollar. They want to do a business, then they should be like any other business. And that's what we need to push for. Because our money deserves to go to every pregnancy center that it's helping women. Deserves to go to every pro-life organization working for women. Deserves to go to make sure that every foster child gets taken care of before Planned Parenthood gets a single dollar of our money, because Planned Parenthood only uses it so the abortionist can drive a Corvette, so the abortionist can drive a Bentley, so the abortionist can have mansions, so the abortion industry can keep giving those babies to be trafficked for their bodies and their cells. So who's with me defunding Planned Parenthood? Thank you so much for being here. They always think the Mexican is the one that is going to go over the clock, but I'm going to prove them wrong today. Thank you so much. God bless you all.
Now comes the fun part. My name is Eric Baptist. I'm a lawyer for Alliance Defending Freedom. And I'd like to welcome our friends from Planned Parenthood, probably watching this live stream right now, and their friends at the ACLU as well. Because like, wait, bankrupting Planned Parenthood? What's this all about? Let's talk about that. Well, you may already know, well, from the past speakers, like Planned Parenthood deserves to be defunded, bankrupted, and put out of business forever. But how do we do that, right? Like that's something we've been trying to achieve for a very long time. And so this might be a little dry of a presentation even because like it's going to, let's break down the numbers. I want to talk about that a little bit because how much money does Planned Parenthood take in on an annual basis, or at least what they've disclosed? They take almost $2 billion. Last time I saw a number that was publicly disclosed through their tax forms, it's $1.9 billion they get in revenue every year. And how much does it come from you, the taxpayer, from the federal government? And the state government? Well, they say upwards of $670 million, again, as of 2022. But again, out of 1.9, only 670 million come from the taxpayer. So 1.2 billion is actually coming from other sources. One from the patients directly, and two from private contributions. And so people are donating to them as well. So I want to talk about that because they have increased the number of donors, and especially in light of the Dobbs decision in 2022. In 2022, it jumped up from 590,000, so 590,000 to 727,000 people donating privately to Planned Parenthood. So they do have some private supporters as well that comprise that $1.9 billion. So what do we do about that? Well, first of all, I think I would say help is on the way, or help has come. This last week brought a change in the federal government with the new administration entering, and good things have already occurred. And I think you already know about it, but I think even before then, there was an Elon Musk tweet back in November, it was great, where he was talking about Doge, and he said, Doge will help end federal overspending by taking aim at the $500 billion plus in annual federal expenditures that are unauthorized by Congress or being used in ways that Congress never intended, including nearly $300 million to progressive groups like Planned Parenthood. Lily doesn't know, it's actually a lot more. But that was a good sign. And then this past week, what did President Trump do through executive action? He issued an executive order last night saying that it is now the policy of the United States, consistent with the Hyde Amendment, to end the forced use of federal taxpayer dollars to fund or promote elective abortion. That's amazing. That's great work, and we had 4 years of not that policy, and he should be commended for it. The good news is that was for domestic funding. The even better news is he issued a memorandum directing Secretary of State Marco Rubio to ensure that U.S. taxpayer dollars do not fund organizations or programs that support or participate in the management of a program of coercive abortion or involuntary sterilization. He's also restored the Mexico City policy, which is huge. Taxpayer money should not go to fund the ending of the lives of people abroad as well. Like foreign lives matters too, and so having us not fund abortions abroad is huge. And again, that's a policy that President Trump enacted. He brought back. Every Republican administration in recent years have done that, so I'm glad he did that, and he should be commended for it. That's a great start to this administration, and I'm very excited for that. But then you're asked, well, it sounds like the federal government's out of the business of abortion. Well, no, unfortunately it's not, because Planned Parenthood, purports to do other things outside of end unborn lives, right? They get money for other services as well, and those are going to be through two different buckets, Medicaid and also grants from the federal government. And so Medicaid is something that you've probably heard about. In 1965, Congress enacted Medicaid to help poor or low-income families afford medical expenses, and that's a noble effort. And what has been done, though, is it's a joint program between the federal government and states, so both fund into it, mainly from states. And some states now, in the light of the Dobbs decision, have decided not to fund Planned Parenthood, even if these funds are technically designated for non-abortive purposes. Money is fungible. If you give Planned Parenthood, $500,000, and that's going to be $500,000 that could be used for other things besides abortion, but now you're making their abortions more lucrative as well, and it's helping aid and abet their bottom line. And we don't want to do that. So some states have stood up and said, we're not going to give you any money. One, you're also a purveyor of death. Why should we give you any money just because you're doing some health service or a health checkup of a woman who comes in your door? And so the state of South Carolina tried to do that. Planned Parenthood sued them, took them to court, and won at the district court, won at the Court of Appeals. And I'm happy to say that ADF represents the state of South Carolina in a case that's now being taken up by the Supreme Court to review whether South Carolina can have its right to deny these funds of Medicaid to Planned Parenthood. Does Planned Parenthood even have a right? Planned Parenthood is suing because they think they're entitled to these funds, like taxpayer money. Like, that's not right, and they don't deserve it because, as you just heard, Planned Parenthood is evil. They do bad things to babies. They do bad things to children. They do bad things to their own people. So why should they be getting the money? And so that case is going to be litigated. And there's an oral argument in March. The case is called Medina versus Planned Parenthood. Please look out for that. It's a very important case. And it will allow states to now defund Planned Parenthood and other abortion facilities who get their Medicaid funds. And I think that's truly an important way to take away. Thank you. And there's something called Title X, too. These are grants given by the federal government to reproductive health care facilities to help, to help family planning programs throughout the country, targeting lower income and adolescent patients. But again, who can get that money? What can the states do with it? Can they give the money to Planned Parenthood? Can they give it to non-abortive services? And this has been a debate among the states and the federal government what they can or cannot do. And again, the good news is Joe Biden is no longer president. His Title X rules were actually mandating pro-life states to refer for abortion, to talk about abortion, the option, and they didn't want to do that. So his administration cut off the funds for those folks, and I fully expect the Trump administration to roll back that Biden-era regulation because that's another way Planned Parenthood gets money that they shouldn't be getting, but they think they're entitled to, and states are trying to, again, assert their privilege and prerogative to protect taxpayer money and prevent them from funding entities such as Planned Parenthood. Again, this is systematic in how we're trying to chip away. We're going to go after Medicaid. We're going to go after Title X. But it doesn't end there, unfortunately, because, again, we have to do something bigger. And it's kind of talking about what Seth talked about. We have to kind of change the hearts and minds. We have to win in the courts of public opinion, too. I'm a lawyer, but I know we can win in the court. But if we don't win in the court of public opinion, we can undo the victories we achieve in court because the people might revolt. They might get a new law that undermines our victory. So we always want to make sure we're trying to win the culture. And with Planned Parenthood, it's just like, this is Planned Parenthood. They're evil. We've talked about their racist, eugenic past. We talked about what they're trying to do to children. But really making sure we highlight that so people don't really... Sometimes I'll take a step back. I guess anecdotally, I've talked to some people who say, oh yeah, my family, we're just having a barbecue last summer, and they're like, oh, we think Planned Parenthood's good, they provide services. And they're like, what are you talking about? They do these abortions, this is their business, and they didn't realize that Planned Parenthood is actually this evil entity. So part of it's an education campaign. Still, even to this day, I know we kind of are in the life movement, we're really entrenched, but your average person out there, I'm not going to name the state where this person was. I'm going to do my home state of Illinois. Someone's in Illinois, just not really, thinking about it, but they're just thinking, I thought they're just there to help, people with, modest incomes and who need free reproductive services. And that's not the case. And so I think educating people about Planned Parenthood is important because I think I just want to emphasize, no matter what you want for healthcare services, people need to stop going to Planned Parenthood. If you're on Medicaid, you can go to other places outside of Planned Parenthood. Don't give your money to Planned Parenthood. And we need to make sure people understand why that's important because, again, it's a purveyor of death and destruction along the ways. And that's kind of where I want to kind of focus at my last part of today's talk because they are merchants of death. We know that. But they're also becoming merchants of damage in terms of in the name of gender ideology. And again, you know about this, but I want to focus on this because it's so important. Because after the Dobbs decision, when states can now have pro-life laws, we have seen tangible victories. I know sometimes people say, oh, the Dobbs decision is it's a step back for the life movement. No, not at all. It's a great first step in the life movement. It's the next chapter because states now have pro-life laws. Planned Parenthood is laying off their staff across the country. They're closing up shop in various locations. That is awesome. That is a victory. We should celebrate it. Absolutely. And how do we know we're succeeding? Not just by the layoffs, not just by the closures of their facilities. It's because they're changing their business model. They have gone from just killing babies to now if the kid's alive, they're going to come after our children, right? They are trying to, in the name of gender ideology, send puberty blockers, send cross-sex hormones to children. That is dangerous. But that is also, in my mind, as a lawyer, playing with fire. You know why? Because none of those drugs have ever been approved by the FDA for these uses, right? This is all off-label use. And that is dangerous because, as we have seen, now even in Europe, they're coming away from that model, saying maybe we shouldn't send these life-altering drugs to children who are literally children, not even teenagers, experiencing what they call gender dysphoria. And they're giving them, and you start with puberty blockers, go to cross-sex hormones, and then go to surgeries. And Planned Parenthood is now very complicit in the doling out of these drugs to kids, sometimes not with the parents' consent. And these are life-changing results. You can see testimony after testimony from detransitioners to understand the lifelong impact and physical, emotional, psychological harm that Planned Parenthood is inflicting on these children. And then now as adults, there's a lot of regret. Well, malpractice lawsuits are a thing, and they're not minor by any means. And what this is all screaming, and we've seen this now in the gender ideology space, where a lot of these purveyors of these drugs are now being sued. And these are not minor lawsuits. Malpractice lawsuits are pretty big. And I'm going to just break down some highlights of some of the biggest ones in U.S. history, just so you can understand why I'm talking about this. Is one jury awarded a gentleman $216 million following his medical malpractice case against a university hospital. They just misdiagnosed him. They misdiagnosed terribly, which caused irreparable harm to him, but it was a misdiagnosis. Another Bronx-based jury awarded a woman $172 million after a medical malpractice lawsuit against New York City. Again, the details are terrible, but you read any or hear about any detransitioner story, that is also terrible, what they have been experimented on by the provider of these drugs and these surgeries. Finally, I'll give you one example. Another woman was awarded $135 million following her medical malpractice case. So even one person can get these hundreds of million dollars of liability or claims and damages for these malpractice claims. Well, if you add up what I just gave you, it's upwards of $500 to $600 million So we're closing that delta. You have $700 million in federal government funds. You have 1.2 to close that delta. I've just erased another $500,000 to $600,000 from 3 lawsuits alone. You tell me we can't bankrupt Planned Parenthood with that model? I don't know what we can't do, but I think that's a recipe for success. And so if you're watching at home, be careful, Planned Parenthood. We're coming after you. Thank you.